Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily for Wednesday, October 2nd. I'm still very happy that it's October, even though the weather has not been the best here in DC. I am joined by my co-host, Minna Stein. Minna, how are you today?
Just peachy. I'm
That is,
happy.
yeah.
I'm happy about the debate.
Okay, that is one reaction to the debate, and that is, of course, what we're going to start with. So, Minna, why don't you just go ahead and give us your opinion on the debate?
My opinion on the debate was, well, first of all, it was nice to watch a civilized debate, right? I don't know if you felt the same way, but I feel like it's always screaming and interrupting, and we just say nonsense whenever we feel like it, and we attack the other person. And don't get me wrong, there was lots of lying. Like, I'm not trying to insinuate that there wasn't any lying, but I it was nice to watch a debate where the two people debating each other were being kind to one another, and it just felt like a return to some of the old presidential and vice presidential debates before the introduction of Trump. I will say that I did think some of the civility kind of got in the way of Walz's points. Like, at one point he was
Yeah,
talking about,
I
like he
agree
was,
completely.
I mean, like, it was nice, but I felt like he maybe took it a step too far because the person he was debating is like genuinely not a good person with very bad intentions. And he was saying like, well, I believe you. I assume you want to fix this problem. Or like, I bet you do believe the things that you're saying about abortion. And I'm like, I wish you hadn't said that because
Yeah.
you know he doesn't.
Towards the end of the debate, too, he kept saying this line of, like, I think there's a lot of area of agreement here. And he came back to that a couple times in a row. And I was like, I don't think there is. I'm not convinced that there is a lot of area of agreement here. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I get that for especially a lot of moderates, people like to see that kind of thing of the candidates, shaking hands and being civil. But I think it was just a bridge too, like you said, it was a bridge too far. It was too much. Like, I don't agree that there is a lot of areas for agreement there. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
there's practically any. So it was very frustrating to see. And, part of me does like that it wasn't just a cage match, but also I think he's, like you said, it was too civil. Like, I don't think it's true that there's agreement. And it was really frustrating to see Walz go back to that point. It was obviously something that the campaign wanted him to hit on.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because they're trying to appeal to moderates,
yeah, and
independents, people who might have voted for Republicans in the past. Like, and I get that. He's this Midwestern white guy, he's a gun owner. He has that appeal. So I understand the strategy, but I just wish like Walz wasn't really, he wasn't on the attack.
mm-mm.
He was very defensive. He didn't say really anything about Project 2025. I wish they had brought that up way more. I don't want to say it was a bad debate because I don't feel that way, but I didn't feel like Walz had the upper hand in a lot of the
No.
questions that they answered. I felt like he was defending his position after being
Hmm.
attacked by Vance.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think Walz did fine, especially, given that leading up to this, he's like, I'm not a good debater. And I'm glad he gave us that he kind of prefaced the debate with that because he wasn't a particularly strong debater. I mean, he seemed pretty flustered. He kind of had some verbal gaffes, which doesn't bother me
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately I'm already going to vote for him anyway. He had the truth on his side in his answers, so he gave actually substantive and truthful answers, which, if you're actually listening to what they're saying, that's hugely substantive. And, if that's what you're listening to, then he obviously won. But in terms of the optics of the debate, I think he lost because he seemed nervous. He had those verbal gaffes. I mean, I'm sure his line of saying "I'm friends with school shooters" is going to be repeated ad nauseum in conservative media. But that stuff ultimately isn't substantive. It's window dressing. It doesn't really matter. It's not something that I care about when I'm thinking about who I want to vote for president. I care about policy, and on the policy issues, Walz clearly won.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
So
I do think that yes, he did seem more nervous. And I think, especially in the beginning, he seemed really nervous. And I think as the debate went on, he got way more comfortable.
Yeah.
He had a way easier time hitting back on certain points and certain issues, and had kind of that like funny charm that people love about him so much. Like there was a point in the debate where they were like, hey, Senator, you still have 20 seconds if you want to keep talking. And he's like, no, I'm good. And then Walz was like, can I have that time then? Because I have a lot I want to say on this topic. And it was like funny. And I felt like if the debate was 4 hours long, we would have gotten to a point where he was like very comfortable in giving the performance that maybe I had wanted before the debate happened. But so that's how I feel about like their performances. I definitely feel like Vance gave a stronger like looks performance, like from the outside. Exactly. If you're not listening to them, he looked way better.
He had the style, and Walz had the substance. So I think ultimately a lot of people are going to view this as a draw.
But I will say that I think I think Walz seemed like the more tenured, experienced, and trustworthy candidate. You know, he spoke about his experiences. He talked about Harris and their potential administration and what she wants to do and what her budget looks like and her plan. But he talked about himself and what he's accomplished in his state and his experiences and all of the things he's done that would make him a good vice president and a good part of this administration and a trustworthy person to be having help Harris make tough decisions. And Vance did not seem like that at all. He just kind of seemed like a Trump lapdog, which we know he is. But I know the job of the vice president is to support the president and their positions. And I think that Vance did a great job supporting Trump and reiterating his positions, but he didn't really speak a ton to who he is, what his experience is, and what he brings to the table. He just kind of regurgitated Trump positions. I didn't really feel like it made him seem like a trustworthy vice president, although he did comment on some of the things he's previously said about like Trump being Hitler and not being fit for the presidency and all of that. Like he kind of walked some of those statements back, but I didn't really, I mean, even when they were talking about like immigration bills, you know, he didn't talk about, I guess what I'm saying is he didn't talk at all about his time in Congress, and he was so critical of Congress, but he didn't really ever say anything that he did or he accomplished while he was in Congress. I don't feel like I know anything more about him as a legislator, but I do about Walz.
Outside of
I do know what kind of leader he is.
Outside of a couple lines where he kind of references his time in Senate, you would be forgiven for forgetting that he's even in office,
right?
In terms of JD Vance, I mean, like Tim Walz, time and time again, was like, here's what we did in Minnesota. Here's what we did in Minnesota. Here's Minnesota, almost too much Minnesota, but, you know, that's where he's the governor. So obviously he's going to draw on that a lot. But I mean, to your point, Vance very rarely drew on his legislative record. You know, whether that's because it's not that impressive, which is true, or whether he was trying to stay on the message of I'm just here to prop up Trump, you know, could be both. But I mean, that was definitely a stark difference. And again, why Walz was better on the substance. And you know, I think the two answers where Vance really fumbled hard was, of course, January 6th, where he couldn't give a straight answer on whether or not it was good or bad, which is pretty damning, but it's also not really surprising. And then, of course, the abortion and healthcare answers, where we know that this is the Harris-Walz campaign's bread and butter. We know that this is their, you know, strong area, so that wasn't surprising either. But those are the two biggest blows to Vance for sure.
The abortion conversation was very surprising to me. I don't know if you want to give your thoughts on the answers that were given to the abortion question, but so Vance's answer was basically Republicans need to do a better job listening so that we can have women trust us more to make the best decisions for them. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what he was saying?
It kind of, yeah, his answer was weird. I didn't really get anything out of his answer. I was just kind of was like, all right, well, I know what their position is, so I'm just going to ignore this wholesale.
But his answer wasn't, in my opinion, what the public, like Republican consensus on this issue is. It was like, clearly American people are angry about our position, which like is true. The majority of Americans do not agree with this pro-life Republicans need to tell women what to do with their bodies because they know best, like stance that they have. But so yeah, he leaned a lot into that. Like we were not correct maybe, and we need to listen, and there needs to be a more open dialogue. And he like told a story about a friend of his who had an abortion. I don't know. I think like coupled with, you know, one of our other stories that we have today is that Trump vows to veto any federal abortion ban after previously refusing to commit. I feel like there's this Trump campaign, let's walk back a little bit all of our abortion hard stances that we have, because clearly it's not a winning, especially with abortion being on so many ballots in so many states that Trump needs to win. And it's so hugely unpopular, his position. I don't know.
Well, I mean, not to sympathize with the Trump camp, but they are between a rock and a hard place. They're between a rock and a hard place here, because obviously the pro-life position, such as it is with Republicans, is not nationally popular at all.
Yeah.
But if they walk that back at all, they lose the evangelicals, which is their most diehard voting bloc. And I've read a couple articles in recent weeks with evangelicals saying that like the Trump camp has already rolled back too much on the abortion argument, because, you know, these are people that don't want any exceptions, you know, et cetera. So they don't really have an easy way out. They dug this hole themselves, so they don't get my sympathy. But I am curious, you know, like you say, it does seem like they're trying to walk it back a little bit. I don't know that that's going to work, because I think they're going to lose some of the diehard support that they had. You know, I say that, but who are evangelicals going to vote for if not Donald Trump? So, you know, maybe a lot of what they've said in terms of we're going to pull our support is bluster. Hard to say until voting day, but I don't know that this pivot is going to really convince the American people that we're on the fence. It seems pretty disingenuous. It's, you know, you can't really make an about turn on such a significant issue in October.
Yeah,
and expect people to really believe you.
I think that their support is pretty much baked in, but I think that this debate was really a display for undecided voters, independent voters, people who have maybe voted for Republicans and Democrats in the past and don't know enough about Harris or Trump to make a decision. I think that it's very true that people like us, or people like the people who are listening to this podcast, like we know what Trump's position on abortion is, and we know what Harris's position on abortion is. And it seems crazy to think that someone would question what their position on abortion is. But, you know, there's voters who don't know and need displays like this debate to make their decisions about these candidates and how they feel about these issues. But it just seemed odd to me that Vance's answer was simultaneously, I think we need to listen to women, and also we know what's best for families.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too on abortion. I don't see that really working, but maybe I'm wrong. And then with January 6th, I mean, no, that wasn't really a surprise. It was a good clippable moment, but again, our voters still not sure that that's the Trump camp's position. I mean, that's been pretty clear for 4 years.
I think so. I think the thing is just that Vance has kind of said, yes, I'd certify the election. Trump is a terrible president. He's basically Hitler. Like, he's waffled on it. So I think maybe that's where the question comes from.
Yeah, I guess. And, you know, he gave his answer. through his
Yeah.
non-answer. That tells you all you need to know.
Right.
And then I think Walz's most weak moment was the very odd question about his time in Hong Kong, which I thought was a bizarre question to begin with.
I did too.
My initial reaction to that question was like, who gives a shit? Like, even if he did lie, like, okay, he was there at a slightly different time in the same year. Who, like,
right?
Okay, like, I don't care. I mean, I guess some
Yeah.
people will care because it's a lie, but like, I don't really give a shit. Like, I don't see how people are gonna really care about that. Other than I could see it, maybe people would perceive it as him being less trustworthy, but it's not like he didn't go. The allegation is just that he was there slightly after Tiananmen Square. It's like,
just by like a few months, right?
It's like, okay, like an honest truth could be that he just forgot, and it was so long ago that he kind of blurred the time in his mind. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. But even if it was an intentional fib, who cares?
Do you think they asked it because they were like, well, if we're gonna ask Vance about his like misspeaking, air quotes, then we have to ask Walz about his too. So they pulled this random. He seemed kind of surprised by it also, if I'm being honest.
And his answer was not very good.
I thought it was a fine answer. I think that like it could have been a little bit more polished and thought through, but I think relating it to Trump's position on China and saying that he's like totally out of touch and he wished that Trump had been on one of these trips to China so you could actually experience what the culture and what the community is like there.
I guess to be fair, I like the answer because I don't think it's a question that even merits an answer because it's a non-issue in my eyes. So I don't mind it, but I can see how it would be perceived as a bad answer.
Fair enough.
But I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think it was an effort to appear bipartisan or unbiased.
Yeah.
And I think that's just pathetic. Like,
I miss the moderators from ABC.
These moderators
I'm sorry.
These moderators were weird. The thing that pissed me off was time and time again, they would be done speaking. And then the one moderator would say, all right, your time is up. It's like, yeah, they weren't talking anymore. Like,
I don't know if you noticed this in the beginning. This is like such a nothing, but I laughed so hard when the candidates shook hands, but they didn't move the camera off the moderators. So they were just sitting there like smiling awkwardly, like, what do we do? And it was on them for like a solid 6 seconds where they were just like, what?
Yeah.
And then they finally moved the camera to show them like breaking the handshake.
Yeah,
and
it was very odd.
So
Your time is up when they were done talking annoyed me greatly. And then the other bad one of the other bad Vance moments was when he was like, "You guys said you weren't going to fact check," which is
oh my gosh,
so whiny.
How transparent can you be? Also, like you said, I could lie without you fact checking me.
Yeah, that was a really bad moment. I mean, it was probably just red meat for the base to then complain about the moderators, which Trump already did on Truth Social. I'm sure I haven't been reading conservative Twitter or anything, but I'm sure they're bitching about the moderators.
Well, then right after that, Vance is like yelling over the moderators and they're not cutting off his mic.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you're going to break the fact checking rule, like turn the mics off.
There was 2 times where Vance just like kept talking and they refused to cut his mic. And it's just like, what are the moderators there for?
I don't know.
I hate the deference to the idea that we have to be perceived as being unbiased. It's like, okay, I get that you need to be unbiased, but this is getting ridiculous where you're just letting one of the candidates exploit that because there's not, the candidates are not equal. One is far worse than the other. And you're going to have to treat them a little bit differently to keep them in check because they lie constantly.
Another thing, unrelated. Somebody who was mic'd was coughing throughout the debate. And every time I heard the cough, I was looking at both of the candidates and I was like, neither of them are coughing. Who's coughing? It wasn't the moderators either. It wasn't the candidates. Who is that?
I didn't hear that, but yeah, it was a strangely produced debate, but Outside of some nitpicks, that the moderators were like fine. I think
they were fine.
I think a lot of the questions were, I didn't agree with the framing. So I didn't love a lot of the questions. Opening with, wasn't the first question, would you approve first strike? And
yes,
that's a
in Israel.
Crazy a question to start the debate of whether you would authorize first strike against Iran. That's a very wild tone setter.
It was. And I feel like it shook Walz a little bit.
I mean, I just don't even agree with the framing. I mean, I would think the question should be more general about like, what would you do in the Middle East? Not would you bomb the shit out of Iran? That's a very hawkish way to frame that question, and I don't agree with the framing. I don't think it's particularly helpful either. I want to know what they're going to do to fix the situation, not whether they're going to turn Iran into a crater. That's not my concern. So I just think the framing of a lot of the questions was not to my taste. But I think to be fair, I do think both candidates got pretty stilted questions. I do think Walz got a few more that were a bit more aggressive, but
I agree.
Vance also did get a couple that were just like, okay, that's a pretty go kind of hard on him, but they should all be really hard questions, or they should all be softballs. It shouldn't be unevenly distributed.
Yeah. I also thought in the beginning of the debate, they threw all of the questions more to Vance. So it like forced Walz to be on the defensive. And then as the debate went on, they shifted to doing like a back and forth. But in the beginning, it was like every question was thrown to Vance first. And I think it made him look stronger and Walz look a little weaker because of just the order.
Yeah. I mean, I at the end of the day, I think the takeaway is that Vance reminded people that he's a lawyer and an intelligent guy and actually has the ability to speak coherently. And when he's in settings like this, where it's very set up, he can do well. It's when he's trying to connect to people as a human being that he flops on his face. Whereas Walz is the complete opposite. Where Walz is seemingly very genuine. Everything I've seen from him suggests that he's a genuine guy. And it's in these scenarios where he doesn't necessarily excel. I think that just depends what you value. I value the more genuine side rather than who's more polished in a debate. But I'm not sure.
I think ultimately vice presidential debate doesn't matter. Like people don't vote because of the vice president. But this is such a close election and there's so little time left. I think it was important because Harris can't make any missteps, not even in a vice presidential debate. And I think it went okay. I wish it had gone great, but it went okay.
Yeah, I mean, the CBS...
And let's hope it ultimately doesn't matter.
The CBS poll of who won the VP debate among debate watchers, 42% JD Vance, 41% Tim Walz. So almost perfect even split. And then 17% tie. So I don't think it'll really move the needle at all. I think both sides are going to come away with things that they're proud of and happy with. I think it honestly, based on this poll, it boosted both of their favorability. Boosted Walz 8%. It boosted Vance 9%. So Walz 52% before, 60% after. Vance 40% before, 49% after.
Yeah.
So still a huge gulf between them. 11% now instead of 12%.
Yeah.
But that kind of tells me that both sides got what they wanted out of this. Obviously, they would have wanted a knockout, but that also didn't even really seem to be what they were going for.
No, not at all.
The refrain I've seen is that the motto seemed to be "do no harm," just don't make headlines, don't do anything crazy. And I have to agree based on what I saw.
Trump didn't follow that. I saw in the first 15 minutes of the debate, he was tweeting about how like Walz was doing such a horrible job and he was so, he was writing notes. Why is he writing so many notes? And I was thinking like, why? I just don't understand. Cause like yesterday we did the story that was JD Vance didn't feel like he had to prepare for the debate at all. He's like, I don't have to prepare. I've got this. And I just don't understand why in their campaign it's such a good thing to not prepare or take notes or think things through or make sure that you believe what you're saying or you've actually prepared in some kind of way to speak intelligently and have it well thought out. I just I don't understand attacking that. That seems like a good thing to me.
Well, Trump's an idiot. I mean,
fair enough.
That's the answer. I mean,
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people just tend to nitpick these kind of things in debates, especially. I mean, you think in the past. I know one of the examples is one of the first televised debates, JFK versus Nixon, where anybody who listening thought Nixon won. Because he was a better debater, but then anybody watching thought JFK won because Nixon looked like shit on TV. And that matters. I think it matters maybe less today than it did in the past because there are more aggressive and substantive differences between the candidates. But that kind of stuff, I do think there's still some of that stuff matters. The perception and veneer of politics, unfortunately, does still matter to people, especially moderates and undecideds who maybe don't have as deep of a grasp of the issues. The kind of aesthetics is going to make a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's stupid. It shouldn't. I don't care if my president is sweaty or not. I care about policy. But
yeah,
I guess we'll see. Well, that is our big takeaway from the debate. Obviously, lots of big stories today. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about all of them here, but we have our regularly scheduled DSR Wednesday where we're going to talk all about the unfolding crisis in the Middle East, what that means. We have some great guests for that, so please stay tuned for that. Daily Blast, of course, already in your feeds. If you haven't listened to that, listen to it after this. And we will be back tomorrow and Friday with more DSR Daily and more across the DSR network. So until then, bye-bye, everyone.